They knew that most of the population was too lazy to search out the facts. Their truths became what the mass media wanted them to believe. It was that perception that governed the masses. Lies and truths were only used to aid the promotion of the perception they wanted the masses to believe. The reason they did it was to gain readerships or viewers to increase the profit of their organizations. Only higher numbers of followers would satisfy their greed. Dinah realized that she had one chance, and that was talking to me. I was just leaving the office for the day when the receptionist informed me that my wife was there to see me. I said I would be right out. I went out carrying the framed picture of her that I had on my desk. Stopping in front of her, I said, "Do you want this?" Dinah said, "No." Handing it to the receptionist, I said, "Could you please throw this picture in the trash, as neither one of us has any reason to keep it?" Dinah got teary-eyed and said, "Can we go somewhere private and talk?" "No need. I wouldn't believe a thing you said," I said as I took off my wedding ring, handing it to her. "You can put this with yours wherever you have it hidden, because I can see it's not on your hand. That tells me all I need to know. Our marriage ended the moment you told Bridget what you had done and why. What you didn't know was that I was working underneath our deck and heard it. You made it clear in what you said, and did that you had to make sure your lies became the truth. If I talked to you, it would just be more of your mind games. Email me where you want your personal belongings sent to. The rest can be decided by the lawyers. Don't contact me again. We're done because the New York Times and you have humiliated me enough. To many of your followers, I'm nothing but a laughingstock," I said in a raised voice. Telling all via the New York Times that what you were doing was acceptable because we had an open marriage was just like you, because it was over the top. Like so much of your BS, it had no basis of truth, I said. And like all you have done, it had nothing to do with the facts. The New York Times made it quite clear that you were enjoying your romantic fling with your boy toy in Paris. I'm sure it will be accepted as a fact in divorce court. After all, if the New York Times reports it, it must be the truth. Without a further word, I went to the elevator and called for one to come. The receptionist couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had never seen me act this cold to anyone. I could hear Dinah sobbing as I walked away. As I waited, I heard the office receptionist say, "Ms. Richards, you're no longer recognized as being acceptable in this office. Please leave and never return. The next time I see you here, I will call building security and have you escorted out. I won't allow a woman like you to smell up this place. Trey Richards is the most respected person in this office and a friend to us all. None of us find it humorous that you used the New York Times to end your marriage. He did not deserve being dumped by you in such a pubic way." Dinah was shocked. She hadn't dumped her husband as far as she was concerned, but the office receptionist believed she did. As I rode down the elevator, I removed her from my contacts on my cell phone. By the time I had got to the bottom, she had called. Before even answering her, I had blocked her calls. I went into settings and shut the GPS off because I knew that with it turned on, my phone would be easy to track. All it would take was someone with a bit of intelligence with the right kind of app. I was headed to the subway, which would take me to the nearest exit, so I could catch the bus home when Bridget called. "Dinner at 7, my house. I'm already home." I took the afternoon off after I heard the great news directly from Dinah that she'd been served. "You could have told me," she said. "Pick up some red wine as I got a roast of beef already in the oven." "Sounds good," I said with excitement. "I will take a taxi after I get the wine, so I should be early." It was about half an hour walk to my favorite beverage store. I bought 2 bottles of a better quality of the red wine, a bottle of Crown Royal, and a 2-liter bottle of Coke before flagging down a taxi. I was about 10 minutes from home when Bridget texted me. "Garage open, run from the taxi in. Dinah and her entourage are at your home waiting for you. The situation does not look good. Taxis in New York are famous for dropping you at the curb." It took an extra 20 for him to agree to pull into the driveway. As soon as I ran in, she began shutting down the bay door. We were both hoping I wasn't seen because we both understood the queen bee was now a drama queen who had lost control. We both assumed that in Dinah's state of mind, and with her view of how marriage was supposed to be, anything was possible. "Make yourself at home," Bridget said, "then pour us some of the wine. I'm going to change quickly in case what was going on was noticed." I did as Bridget asked. I undid the suit jacket and vest, taking them off along with my tie. Undid 3 buttons on my shirt. Before getting the wine glasses out, I rolled up my sleeves. Let me tell you that there are times that you wish you were elsewhere. This was not one of them, because right in front of me I knew I was seeing the kind of life I wanted. When Bridget returned, she took my breath away. She had let her red hair down, removed her makeup, and changed into sensual evening wear. The sheer full-length black nightgown was designed as if it were a fine screen, allowing one a glimpse of her sweet flesh. I could spend hours worshipping her body. My instant hard-on told us both I was caught in a losing battle. Bridget's bright eyes showed me that she was pleased with my automatic response. We had just kissed and were sharing the first taste of the medium wine I had bought when there was a knock at the door. I moved from the view of the front door as Bridget went to answer it. "Hi, Dinah. What do you want?" Bridget said. "As you can see, I am kind of busy. My boyfriend is here and is staying the night. It was noticed that a taxi dropped someone off at your house," Dinah said. "Since Trey has not shown up, I instantly thought it might be him." "So, you got one of your entourage watching my place. Why am I not surprised? When you talk to Trey, do me a favor, let him know that thanks to him my new relationship is working out great," Bridget requested. "Even my parents have given us their blessing because they think he may be my perfect mate. My mom is already dreaming about babysitting the grandchildren. Is he someone we both know?" Dinah asked. "Based on what I now know about the man I'm falling in love with, I would have to say definitely not," Bridget responded with truth as she closed the door in her face. She walked towards me, trying to hold in her giggles. I held up my left hand to see if she would notice. She did. "When did that happen?" she asked. I told her what had transpired in the office before she went back into the bedroom to change because she was still cooking our dinner. When she came out, she discovered me peeling the potatoes she had set out for supper. "We're going to have to figure out how to get me clean clothing," I said. "Thank God I wear a standard size." "You just might be stuck here until Monday," Bridget said. "I don't think Dinah will be going anywhere this weekend because she believes you have to come home sometime. I guess she didn't get the message when you threw your wedding band in her face. Let me call my dad's tailor and see what he can deliver for you on short notice," Bridget said. I reached into my pocket and took out my wallet. Handing it to her, I said, "Have him deliver a size 42 jacket, 34-inch waist, 30-inch leg length, shirts 15.5 neck, vest and tie. Best add a second set and a pair of silk pajamas if he has it. Blue jeans, t-shirts, and whatever else I have not mentioned." "What about underwear and socks?" Bridget asked. "Of course," I replied. "Have it applied to my credit card." I listened as she placed the order. It was surprising what color she decided I would look good in. They said they would pull the order as soon as possible and it would be delivered in a rush via a courier within 2 hours if we were willing to pay the fee. It was fun working together as a couple, finishing what she had started. Bridget seemed surprised at how adept I was in the kitchen. I set the table as she transferred the food into bowls and serving plates for the table, gravy made from drippings, Yorkshire pudding, mashed potatoes with lumps, corn on the cob, and of course the beef roast. Joking, she said, "As the head of the house, it's your job to slice the roast." So, I surprised her and did. I ate like a horse, going back for seconds and thirds. I knew if she continued to feed me like this, I would end up rounder than Boss Hog. I told her so. Her response said it all because her face was glowing. After dinner, as we cleaned up, she asked me if we had a small kitchenette at work. I told her yes. She said, "Well then, I can pack you lunch on Sunday night for you to take with you on Monday." Doing the dishes together took a long time because we were doing a lot of kissing. I was impressed. My new clothes were delivered within 2 hours. Bridget signed for them. We unpacked them in the living room. I was impressed. The quality of the clothing was top-notch. The first 3-piece suit came with an extra pair of pants and was a black pinstriped suit. The second a dark navy blue. I had enough new socks and underwear to last me for 2 weeks. Whoever had put the overall order together had color coordinated it well. After removing all the packaging, price stickers and unneeded labels, I asked her where I should put it, and she said, "In your side of the master bedroom clothes closet." We carried them in together. I was surprised she hadn't used it all. I had lots of room to hang my 2 new suits. We hung the 6 new dress shirts and my blue jean shirts. The rest went onto empty shelves. She said I might as well get ready for bed since I was in here already. I gathered up my suit jacket, vest, and tie. As I undressed, I hung my suit up. I was thankful that she used Ivory soap instead of a woman's scented one. I had a quick shower and put on clean new clothes. It was the first time I wore pajamas in years. Coming out of the bedroom, I said, "Bridget, can I have a small garbage bag to put my laundry in?" "Just throw it in the laundry basket," she replied. "We will have to do the laundry before Monday anyway." After doing just that, as I came back out, she caught me in my black silk pajamas with her cell phone camera and set it for her lock screen. When Bridget came back out in the nightgown she had worn earlier, her underwear was missing. "You would have to be a completed idiot not to see where this is going." Taking my hand in hers, she said, "Before we go any further, I want to know your long-term plans are." I laughed and replied seriously, "I want what your parents have." She looked at me with love in her eyes and said, "It's taken them years of hard work together as a couple to get where they are now." I smiled, leaned down, wrapped my arms around her tight, then kissed her with as much love and desire as I could before speaking. "Do you think we can put the needs of the other first like they did?" I guess I said the words she needed to hear because she responded in glee. I think that as a couple we are going to be having a lot of fun trying. Sometimes the most intimate thing you can do is just a little thing. For us, it was not hopping into bed, it was lying on the sofa cuddling each other, holding each other while sharing sweet, tender kisses. The discovery of being a couple falling in love for all the right reasons was enough. We were still on the sofa when the knocking at the door rudely woke us up. It was after 10 a.m. in the morning. Bridget got up and went to answer the front door, thankful that the chain lock was still on. Opening the door, the inch or two the chain allowed, she discovered it was Dinah. "What do you want, Dinah?" Bridget said in anger. "You woke my intended and I out of a sound sleep. My husband Trey didn't come home last night, and none of his conducts have seen him," Dinah said. "I'm starting to get worried about him. I was wondering if you had heard from him." "Too little too late, I'm afraid. I don't buy your worry, sorry," Bridget said. "You publicly dump him via the New York Times, have your entourage say you have an open marriage, and do everything you can in Paris to prove it. The perception of your many followers proves it. The only question is, why did it take 3 years to dump him?" "Look, I'm not going to argue with you about Trey," Dinah said. "My parents read me the riot act last night too. I get it, you all feel that I got what I deserve for what you all think I have done. Perhaps you're all right, perhaps you're all wrong. There are always two sides to every story. Just let me know if you see him that he's all right." With that said, Bridget closed the door, walked back to me. I had found where the stuff was needed to make coffee and had started a pot. "Do you think Dinah is really concerned?" Bridget asked. There was no concern in her voice at all, I said. "She's definitely trying to find out who you're with. It's a good thing I turned the GPS off, otherwise she would know right where I was. It looks like she's trying to figure out how to manage the situation instead of facing it. Until she faces the truth, I'm afraid we still will be having problems going forth." We were sitting on the couch side by side, enjoying our closeness, still lounging around in our bedtime clothes, enjoying our first cup, when a smile came across Bridget's face, and with a giggle, she said, "We going to have some fun today if I can get a little help?" Picking up her cell phone, she called her dad. "Are you and Mom doing anything important today?" Bridget asked. I asked because Trey and I could use your help. The next thing I heard was Bridget said, "Yeah, he's here. The divorce has started. Can you come to pick up his phone, take it downtown before turning the GPS on, and then hit different spots every hour? We think his phone's being tracked, and if we're right, it will give Trey a chance to get some of his personal belongings out of their house." Again, another pause, then Bridget said, "Thanks, we will see you in an hour." Bridget went and got dressed first. I followed. We both dressed casually in blue jeans and t-shirts. I had a blue jean shirt on but left it open and untucked. While getting ready for the day, I called the New York Times tip line and left a message for the gossip lady. Her parents were early. We talked for a few before they left. While we were on the sofa, the spread she had on had crumbled. As a result, her parents got the idea of where I had slept. When Bridget's father saw it, he smiled. Clarence suggested I change my facial appearance for a while until things settled down. From the media coverage, he believed that Dinah was going to cause ongoing problems. That's when we decided a full beard and mustache would be started. They called Bridget when they turned on my cell phone and changed the settings, turning the GPS on. It wasn't 15 minutes till 2 cars left my place and headed out. My ex-wife was in one of them. Just in case, I climbed over the backyard fence and entered my home from the rear. A quick look proved it was empty. Loading up my car with my belongings took about 2 hours. I left the items I knew that Dinah had bought for me behind, along with all my socks and underwear. Outside of clothing, the only thing I did was reset the home computer to its original factory condition. In doing that, any connection to my office was permanently gone. I took one last look around the house as I took the house keys off of my keychain, placing them with the garage door opener on the kitchen counter. For me, it symbolized putting the past behind me, freeing me to move forward with my life. I opened the garage door and fired up the car, drove next door and backed it into hers. I then closed the bay doors. We had to move a few things around in the master bedroom closet to fit my stuff in. The master bathroom had 2 sinks. I took the side that was available. Some of the things I owned had to go, especially after Bridget saw them on me. If it didn't compliment me, it wasn't good enough. That showed me a lot about our lives going forward. Bridget was the type who would always take pride in how her family looked. Her parents called Bridget at 6 and suggested we meet for dinner. We agreed. When we met them, it was apparent that they had had a day like no other. The first thing Clarence did was hand me back my cell phone. Bridget and I could tell they were in a really good mood. It was fun watching them walk into a place where we were, Heidi said, spreading themselves throughout the location looking for Trey. They must have wasted an hour at Macy's. Dinah was so well known publicly, there were people taking pictures of her everywhere. People were shocked that a lady of her status would be caught in a place like that. They had all sorts of questions which only slowed down their progress. You could tell she was frustrated. Each stop they went to, it got worse for them. Once they showed up, we turned the GPS off, Clarence said with a laugh. After the fourth time, we heard one of her entourage say, "He's not as dumb as she has convinced herself to believe he's having us chase a ghost for some reason." That comment made both Bridget and I smile. Bridget's parents had been followed around all day. Each stop was further down the social ladder for Dinah and her entourage. It made me wonder if Dinah would clue into what was really happening. If she ever got to talk to me again, I knew that one of the excuses she would use was, "I did it all for you." As we ate our dinner, we explained what had happened since Dinah got served. Bridget said to her parents, "We were talking last night about our relationship going forward." Trey said, "Do you think we can put the needs of the other first like they did?" I said that they had been working at it for years. "What you don't know, Mom and Dad, is that we were both talking about you." Clarence got a big smile on his face. His wife got teary-eyed. I got my clothing and personal items out and back to Bridget's house thanks to your help. Bridget said I had to try every piece on. I said, "What your daughter thought didn't compliment me got put in a pile for Goodwill. We dropped them off on the way here." "Get used to it, Trey," Clarence said. "I've been married to her mother for 35 years, and my wife still does it." "Dad," Bridget said. He responded, "What we all know, it's the truth." Both her father and I started to laugh. I went to pay for the meal, and her father went to stop me. It ended up with both of us holding the ticket. So I said, "Let us. You have already done so much for us today, so give us a chance to show you our appreciation." "Clarence, just listen to him," Heidi said. "He wants to be your equal. You wanted to be treated the same way by my dad. Do you want to play the game of one-upmanship with him? Remember, it took years for my dad and you to come to an understanding." Clarence smiled, and so did I. We both had to admit she was right. He said, "That wisdom over the years has talked me through a lot of things. Each time she does it, it's done out of love and with a knowledge that sees things from both sides. Some of my greatest accomplishments have come because I listened to her." With that said, he took his hand off the ticket. Bridget whispered, "Thanks, Dad." Bridget's mother's face glowed in a visible blush before she said, "Don't worry about these two, they're going to make it. After all, he is like us, made from the Missouri red clay. He will listen to reason like you always have and won't be corrupted into believing perception." Dinah Richards was exhausted. It had been a day of chasing a ghost around the city. Every time they located him, he was gone. She felt that after a few hours they would be able to sit down and talk about why he had got it all wrong. Perhaps there was a chance that she could have the operation reversed, since it appeared to be the problem that had started all of this. Now all she wanted to do was go home and soak in the tub. Thankfully, the event she had to attend, she could sit and allow others to come to her, otherwise she would not have made it through the early part of the evening. The posts of the event and what she had found interesting had been received well. Because of the long day, she had come home early. It was when her entourage dropped her off that she realized they all had been played. The bay doors of the garage were open. Trey's pride and joy was gone. He had outmaneuvered them all. It was he that had them all looking like fools. Entering the house, she found the garage door opener and the house keys when she set down her purse. Walking into the spare bedroom, she saw that most of his clothing was gone. To Dinah, that was the moment she realized there was no hope. Trey had found a way to move on with his life. It was then that she realized that in the pursuit of her dream, she had slowly driven him out of her life. Dinah was sitting in the dark crying because in her own way she truly still loved Trey. In a big way, she began to realize it was who and what she associated that had pushed her directions, activities, and thoughts as she built her new persona. Dinah had never seen that in doing so she had lost sight of who and what she was. Bridget clicked the garage door opener as I backed my car in. We had been so busy talking about the dinner we had shared with her parents that we forgot to check to see if anyone was home at my former residence. Sunday, we got up early and went out for the day. Again, it was a day of discovery that drew us closer. It was almost 10 at night by the time we got back. As soon as we were in the house, Bridget took the roast beef out and started making the sandwiches for me to take to work. "What do you want on them?" Bridget asked. "Butter and a little bit of salt and pepper," I said. "Anything else makes the bread soggy by lunchtime." I watched her make 3 sandwiches for me and place them in separate Ziploc bags. Then taking a brown sandwich bag out, she wrote my name on it. Bridget saw me tear up. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing. I just see you packing my lunch for what it is," I replied. "That's all." "What's that? My mom still does it for my dad all the time," Bridget replied. "A simple act that is done out of love," I replied. "Mom, after she caught me with my head on your shoulder sound asleep, warned me that you had a gentle soul." I asked her why it was a warning. She replied, "My grandfather was like that, and he and grandmother had 10 children. I couldn't help it." I started laughing and said, Those were the days before birth control, and it was the twinkle in his wife's eyes that caused it all to start. She had just finished cleaning up when her phone rang. Her dad, worried about the neighbor, had arranged for a limo to pick us up and drop us off at work for the next month. Talking her into my arms, I leaned down and kissed her passionately. She responded in kind. Slowly, things progressed as we began moving slowly to the bedroom. It was time, and we were ready. It was a night when we both put the needs of the other first. By the time we were done discovering all we could about each other, it was almost time to get up. While showering together for the first time, as we got ready for the day the first time as a couple, I washed her body down. She went to work glowing in frustration because by the time I was done, she was just as ready as I was to hop back into bed. The limo dropped me off at my firm first. I was wearing a black pinstriped suit for the first time. With my briefcase, I was carrying the bagged lunch Bridget had made for me. On the way to my office, I stopped at our luncheon room to put my bag in the fridge. The receptionist, who was making the first pot of coffee for the day, looked at me and whistled. "A new suit, a new image, and a huge smile so early in the morning," she said. "Who is she, and how long has it been going on?" I just laughed and responded, "What makes you think it's that? Maybe it's just being free from the past." "No, Trey, you have the look of a man who is discovering real love for the first time," she said. "I'm happy for you and her. I hope she feels the same way." I was in the luncheon room eating the first of my 3 sandwiches at the mid-morning point when the receptionist came in saying, "Are you expecting a client this morning?" I said, "No, Mondays are usually set aside for reviewing my clients' accounts to make sure they're still heading in the right direction." "Emerson Stevens here wanting to talk to you," she said. "What should I tell him?" "Tell him where I am," I said, "and find me a cup he can use." When Emerson came in, I stood up to greet him. "Well, Trey, you're finally dressing for success. I like the new look," he laughed. "Roast beef sandwiches that are homemade. I'm impressed." "I guess you're here to talk about Dinah," I said. "How are you and the better half handling it?" I broke the news to her Friday afternoon, right after getting a copy of your divorce papers. "Did you know that my wife has a sister just as dirty and conniving as Dinah?" He explained. "I told her that you had warned me about what she had done to prepare me. She wants you to know that we will always consider you part of the family," Emerson explained. The New York Times has an interesting story about Dinah and her entourage running all over the city Saturday looking for something that they couldn't find. They were wondering why she was out of her normal high society spots and slumming down. "Guilty as charged. I needed to get my clothing out of the house," I said. By the time I got home Friday night, she and her entourage were already there. So, I had someone holding my cell phone with the GPS on, figuring she knew someone who could track it. "Just so you know, Dinah believes you have found someone new," Dad explained. "Because you had to have helped to pull off what you did. All of your contacts that she knew said they hadn't heard from you all weekend. She blames the person who helped you for making her look like a fool. She is bound and determined that when she finds her words, not mine, she's going to put her in the hospital." "Thanks for the warning, Dad. She's right because she pushed the 2 of us together. They were best friends for years," I said. "Both, Mom, and you have met her a few times." It started after I had moved to the spare bedroom because Dinah felt I needed to be watched, so whatever I did or said did not interfere with her agenda. So, Dinah asked Bridget to monitor my movements and thinking while she came up with a scheme to defuse the situation she had pushed us into. He sat there looking at me for a few minutes and said with seriousness, "Dora and I think the world of Bridget. Do Clarence and Grace know?" "They were the ones moving around the city with my cell phone," I said, "over dinner. They said it was the best fun they had in years." To be honest, neither Bridget nor I were looking for a relationship, but with the situation we were both put in by Dinah caused us to be together a lot, and it happened. "Trey, do you think it's going to get serious between the 2 of you?" my father-in-law asked. I was on my way home on Friday to have the locks changed when Bridget informed me Dinah and her entourage were already there waiting to confront me when I got home. I ended up staying the weekend at Bridget's. Both of us can see us achieving the kind of life we want, but neither has had. My father-in-law picked up his cell phone and called Clarence Smith, setting up a lunch meeting, and then said, "I want to see if Clarence and I can get you both out of where you're living." Dinah is on the warpath. She believes it's outside interference that has caused all these problems, not her own conduct. Her aunt caused a lot of problems when her marriage broke up and ended up doing time because of her extreme actions. She, like Dinah, could not accept responsibility for her own conduct. I think some separation of space might be the best prescription for now. Dad, I read the New York Times Gossip Ladies articles on Dinah to her before I moved to the spare bedroom and said, "Who am I to argue with the truth of the most respected liberal paper in the United States?" I said, then I asked her to prove to me that she wasn't having an affair, knowing damn well that she couldn't. It hit him for the first time that she, by her own conduct, had built a case against herself. So he said, she marketed herself into millions and out of a marriage at the same time. It's sad that she will never understand that. I was sitting in the little luncheon, eating my last 2 roast beef sandwiches at lunchtime when the president walked in. I hear you had Emerson Stevens sitting in here with you this morning. Anything I should be concerned about? No, not really. He was just touching base, catching up on a few things before his luncheon meeting with Clarence Smith, I said as I stood up and closed the door to the room. Off the record, they have been casual acquaintances for years. Their daughters used to be best friends. And you have a personal relationship with both, if my understanding is right? The president said. That explains a lot of things. Some in the business think their organizations would make a good merger. Sir, I don't get involved with their actual business operations. If they want business advice, I tell them that it's best that I stay out of it because it could cause a conflict of interest and affect my career. I said in a serious tone. But I have offered to put a few experts together if they needed it, because I have a few that are good clients. Trey, I think from now on you should just call me by my first name. A man who walks in the shadows of those 2 men is very trusted by them. He said. It also shows what they think of your character. Okay, Gordon, I can do that, I said. As soon as he left the luncheon room, I knew and understood fully this game we called life. My boss, based on what his perception saw, had made a decision about me based more on what he assumed than what he knew. It showed to me just how important truth and honesty were because his perception had nothing to do with what I knew to be the truth. Bridget called me around 1 o'clock. Emerson and her father were gone for lunch together, and she wanted to know what was going on. The first thing I told her was how much I had enjoyed my 3 sandwiches. Then I explained what Emerson had told me. To Dinah, I've become the reason for the end to her marriage, Bridget said. Her perception has distorted the reality of it all. It's sad when one's view won't allow one to see their own part in a situation. Dinah is trying to manipulate and control others' view of things, has caused herself to lose the ability to see the truth. I said, it's sad because she has proven that we as humans will only see what we want to see. The lies, truth, or facts mean nothing. It's our perception of things that guide our thinking. It's been crazy here, Bridget said. I guess we were seen when we went to Coney Island. So, everyone knew thanks to the gossip that I was dating. Then my assistant saw my face today and asked who he was. And when did you realize that you were in love? I got it too. The receptionist was making coffee when I put my lunch in the fridge. She said I looked like a man who had discovered real love for the first time. I told Dinah's father about us this morning and how we got together. He's meeting with your dad to figure out a way to get us out of being right next door to Dinah. Emerson is worried about us. While there must be something else going on in his wife and his mind, Bridget said. For him to take extreme steps like this, does he believe she's that dangerous? Not to herself, but to us maybe, I replied. Because like so many in our society, truth, honesty, and the facts don't mean a thing. It's their own perception that matters. I think Emerson sees that that's what's leading his fear for our well-being. But we haven't done anything but fall in love, thanks to her own interference with our lives, Bridget stated. Can't she see that? Not in her perception, I replied, because she has already erased it from her mind. The silence after my last remark was deafening. Bridget was realizing just how twisted Dinah was making this. I knew that Dinah believed in her own eyes that she walked on water and could do no wrong. She had no checks and balances in her life. As a result, she had lost her judgment between what was right or wrong. Finally, after a few, Bridget said, our mistake is that as a result of her conduct we fell in love. If what we see is right, what price is she going to force us to pay? I really didn't have an answer to her question, and I told Bridget so. Our conversation brought out an understanding of our current situation and how serious it was. Emerson, I believe, has a right to be worried, I said. Neither one of us has a clue to what Dinah will do. Dinah Richards was sitting across from her divorce lawyer, who was reading aloud my lawyer's petition grounds for ending the marriage as an annulment. Her lawyer needed Dinah to see how bad everything looked on paper. Dinah needed to comprehend how serious the situation was. The lawyer realized that most just quickly glanced at the divorce petition and never read it. That was why she was reading it all out to Dinah. As she read it, she kept glancing at her client to see how she was responding. She could see what Trey was saying in his divorce petition was finally registering. The look on her client's face said it all. As she listened, Dinah learned for the first time how bad it looked from a neutral point of view. What was being revealed to her as she listened intently for the first time was very damaging and detailed. After reading it all to her, the lawyer set it down on the desk. Looking right at Dinah, she said, tell me your side of the story from the time you met until now. I am going to record it for further reference. Why should I do that? Dinah asked. Let's just stop the divorce. We can't stop the divorce. He has a dozen or so reasons for getting it granted. But if he wins an annulment against you, it will be much worse, because he will be able to take everything from you if the judge agrees, Janice Cooper stated. Our best way to save anything is to negotiate it all before we go before the judge. His lawyer is a female liberal feminist who is one of the best in the field. She was brilliant in exposing your long-term conduct as a pattern of behavior designed to defraud and avoid the truth. She uses it as a means to expose what your plan may have been all along. She will have no mercy in taking you down. For her, it's a personal case because in her eyes you represent everything she hates. Janice stated with authority. Why do you say that? I don't admit to anything except having my tubes tied, Dinah said. She sees you as a user with no moral fiber who sells her sexuality for the almighty American dollar. To her, you're just as low and despicable as those working for sex on the mean streets, Janice stressed with a serious voice. The fact that the New York Times' numerous news articles are used as references to validate their points makes their claims that much more credible. The reputation of the Times to most is unquestionable. Can Trey really use all the publicity I got against me to prove what he is implying? Dinah asked. Dinah, they got all the background material from the New York Times using a court order, Janice said. Even the photographs too raunchy for them to print in the newspaper. They have all the New York Times gossip reporters' personal notes that raise questions about your long-term conduct. Any judge reading the petition will give heavy weight to the New York Times for the credibility of their reporting. When presented the way his lawyer did, it makes it appear much worse than what Trey's is implying, Janice said. Every piece of gossip caused by witnesses to your conduct or the statements that have been recorded about you and documented by the mass media are being used to strengthen Trey's case. Janice took out 10 8x4 prints of photos for Dinah to take a look at. Each one of them was a picture of her with her entourage. All were taken under nightclubs' dimmed lights while they were on the dance floor bumping and grinding their flesh. Each one showed Dinah in some kind of physical entanglement where her exposed flesh was being fondled, sometimes by more than just one man. The looks in her eyes in the photograph left no doubt that she was apparently enjoying it. No one looking at the photos would deny that she was in a state of sensual or sexual enlightenment, prepared and eager to go further. They were touching her in ways that there was no doubt that she was aroused. The way those pictures are taken, it's quite reasonable to believe that an out-and-out orgy was only a room or two away, Janice said, and that you're nothing but a sex-loving woman when out of the eyes of the public. When it was disclosed in court that they were taken by a New York Times staff photographer, their credibility will not be questioned. The judge will accept it as the unquestionable truth of your active lifestyle. Dinah's face went white. She could not even remember who she was with at the time and who was touching her. It might have been just a momentary incident, but that is not what the images implied. If they became public, her social reputation and image could be ruined. The New York unprinted photographs made her look like she was a living sex doll being passed around. Dinah was reminded by Trey's own words, if the New York Times, the most liberal paper in the country, wrote about it or photographed it, it must be the truth because a newspaper with a history like theirs would have no reason to lie. Your own father gave a notarized statement about you claiming to all three of them that it was medically impossible for you to get pregnant months before you had your operation. It is also verifying what Bridget Smith's statement says. Janice pointed out. They raised the question to the court if she could not get pregnant, what was the need for having your tubes tied? That's why they were able to get the medical reports. The surgeon who tied your tubes verifies it was a last-minute request by you the day before your scheduled operation, and until that moment in time you could have carried full term. Those facts cannot be argued because Trey has got too much proof. Janice went on to explain. In discussing this case with Trey's lawyer, it's been hinted that they're holding something back to be used when we are all in front of the judge because it's even more devastating. When she presents things like this in court, she is going for a kill knowing that it will leave the defendant defenseless, she disclosed. By the look on your face, I must believe that you know what it is. Dinah was on the verge of crying, but she knew it would do no good. So, she said, try to get it sealed so we can't discuss it publicly and see if we can negotiate the rest. I won't fight the divorce. We can try, but your soon-to-be ex is the driver's seat here, Janice said. You humiliated him, made him a public laughingstock, and your long-term conduct as they laid it out makes it appear that it was deliberate. If I was Trey, everything I would do going forward would be done because of the need to get some revenge because of the bathroom jokes being told about him. But he might be willing to talk to me after he has a few days to cool down. After all, we're still married, Dinah said. That's not the question. Ask yourself, when did you stop communicating with him as an equal? Janice asked. Because that's the day your marriage ended, whether or not, you will admit it. From then on, it was downhill all the way. He saw it happening before you did. That's why you were served as soon as you got off the plane. That question hit Dinah hard. She had never thought that we were not communicating, but her lawyer's statement forced her to think back. She stopped being interested in his life when she started the journey to becoming a social media star. Gradually from there, they started drifting apart. Trey worked all day, and she partied a lot of nights at first to keep her name out there. He'd leave for work at 5 in the morning, and she had crawled into bed about 2 hours earlier. She had started this whole journey with that knowledge in the back of her head and had promised herself it would only be 2 nights a week. The more she got into it, the more she wanted it, because to her it was a drug that she started needing. Her lawyer was just stating the facts that everybody could see, but she hadn't. She had been too busy chasing the dream to realize she was walking out of the marriage in her own way. Now it had turned into this nightmare. Okay then, what about it's my body and it's my right to do with it what I want? Dinah said. That's why Trey will be granted the annulment with no questions asked, Janice said. The judge has to rule that Trey had the right to know that you were not going to reproduce and have children before you married him. Instead, you lied to him and came up with a plan to make sure it impossible for you to reproduce. Dinah left her lawyer's office devastated. The realization that the social media hype she created for herself was in part the very thing that her husband Trey was using to take her down. She had followed the New York Times editor friend's advice on how to manipulate the masses to create an image, and it worked so well. It boiled down to a numbers game, he said. That's all. 3 out of 10 will not buy it, the rest will. Those who don't fall in line will be tagged as degenerates or haters. It forces their silence. History has proven time and time again that branding them that way works well. We use it all the time to increase our circulation, which drives advertising revenue up. Another trick that we use quite well is by accusing naysayers of what we have already done, because it takes eyes away from one's own conduct. Always remember that 70% of those who believe you will buy your lies is truth. Now that same illusion she had created to build her career as a social butterfly was damning her to hell. The question on her mind was, will it still be worth it by the time the divorce is done? Trey was proving that he was not the doofus she had slowly convinced herself he was. By standing quietly, not saying a word, he allowed her own sense of freedom. She got with the lifestyle she had created to push her further than she had originally planned to go. She was now reaping the consequences of what she sowed. It was the perception of what her conduct showed to the world that could not be argued. Whether it was the truth or not was longer important. It was the perception she had created that was being seen as the raw truth. Her own conduct that created the illusion she wanted was now being used to take her down. The mass media and her followers had bought it, and now it was believed like it was the truth of a god. She did not see the other side of the reputation she was developing. Dinah had not been defeated by Trey, but by her own actions and deeds done deliberately to market the concept to the social media, which created the attention she craved. Though done in innocence, it painted a perception that could not be argued against successfully. It made the truth false and the lies true. In reality, her only real sin against her husband was when she had her tubes tied. The New York Times' credibility with its readership made it impossible for her to be able to explain what she had done in a way that would be believable. As she hailed down the taxi to take her where her soon-to-ex worked, she reviewed what her lawyer had read to her and realized that he hadn't revealed the most serious thing she'd done. If Trey was really out for revenge, he would have. So why had he kept it secret, is what she wanted to know. Perhaps he hadn't found out. It was about 5 o'clock at night when Dinah found herself standing across the street and facing the office tower Trey worked in. She was hoping that she would be able to catch him leaving the building. She wanted to see if he would be willing to go through the divorce quietly and agree to keep it out of the news. If she was to keep anything she had worked so hard to create, she had to have him to agree to secrecy. If he had what she thought, he might not. But if the case was sealed by the court, he couldn't reveal it. It was about 10 minutes after the hour when Dinah saw the limo pull up. She saw her former friend Bridget step out with her father and hers. Bridget was glowing, her face reflecting her enthusiasm as she walked in excitement into the building. Dinah wondered why the three of them were together. It was clear that Clarence and her father were now friends. She wondered what had brought those two very powerful men together. It took about another 20 minutes for Dinah to find out. She had watched as Bridget went in while their fathers waited while chatting and having a cigarette. Finally, Trey came out. The problem was he was not alone. He was holding Bridget's hand and she was letting him. She studied them as they came through the entrance. Bridget's face was glowing. The way the two looked at each other, she knew who the other woman was that had stolen her husband. It was easy to see by the way they looked at each other that they were a couple in love. What really hurt was that it was her former best friend whom she had deliberately used in an attempt to keep control of the situation. She had pushed them together, and life had thrown them all a curveball. Dinah had to admit to herself she had never expected this to happen. As she watched them from across the street, a smile came across her face for a moment as she thought of the days when her playful mood came out and they would get a bit wild. He had always called it a Bridget moment because that was her name. For Dinah, it was a bitter pill to swallow because it forced her to realize just how stupid she really was. Using the tools she had been taught by the New York Times editor, she thought she would have it all. As he said, lies and truths are only tools to be used when using perception to create a collective thought. As a newbie, she had underestimated how powerful persuasion really was when creating a perception that would be accepted as the truth by most. Dinah had tears in her eyes as she watched her husband and Bridget climb into the limo. Until this moment, she had never appreciated the uniqueness of Trey. All his days, he had never followed the masses or went along with what the majority wanted or believed. He had always described himself as an outsider who walked alone. Because of what was now happening in her life, she saw for the first time how easy it was to manipulate the general population into believing what you wanted them to. All it took was repetitive actions and words until it was sucked up by the sponges who were stupid to think with the intelligence needed to clear out the bullshit they were being fed. To appreciate that fact, you had to understand that most humans will spend more time on themselves and their families in trying to survive than to take the time to think about serious things. Most had not truly been taught when young how to think with an independent mind. Dinah's problem was that Trey always had. To believe something, Trey had to prove it for himself. Dinah watched them drive away together. Her mind went back to the time she asked Bridget if she knew her boyfriend. Bridget had responded, based on what I have learned about him these last few weeks, I would say definitely not. To her, that said everything because she now had to admit that Bridget was right. She had completely lost track of who and what Trey was, a man who walked tall and carried a small stick. He would bend only to a degree, but no further. When he drew a line, he kept it. Dinah had decided that if Trey knew about her secret, he would have disclosed it. So, it gave her time to make sure he never would. Medical records would show it as a birth control service, but the clinic would show what it was when she signed to have it done. Those types of forms were kept in the official records and not sent to billing. Dinah's body shook and trembled with the realization that Trey would always search for the truth because of what he was. He was independent and would be all his days. The rules of human behavior, as taught by the New York Times editor, did not apply to him because he had not bought into the thought of the collective. He believed in independent thought. The four of us, Clarence, Emerson, Bridget, and I, were heading out for dinner. As soon as we got in the limo, the champagne was poured. For some reason, the two of them wanted to celebrate. Both of their wives were already headed to where we were going. There was a lot of discussion about business and what to do going further, as they both wanted to focus on their families rather than money. Impressed over my suggestions over the dinner conversation, Clarence asked, "Does Trey always look at things from all sides like this with forward thinking before making a decision?" "Yes, he does, Dad," Bridget said in pride. After he learned of Dinah's treachery and asked me for a statement, he explained right down to the littlest detail to me what he was thinking and why. It surprised me that he was so frank and honest about it. No man has ever communicated in a completely open and honest way with me. It made him completely different from any man I had known. I looked at her with a look of puzzlement because I had never seen myself as different. That night I saw that he was behaving in the same manner. "You would, Dad." I didn't learn until later that he was raised out of state. Bridget went on to explain. "That's when I started to learn that he was not the man that Dinah was leading me to believe he was. It took me a while to realize that she had been manipulating all who came into her life for a long time, including me, about what kind of person he is, and that we had to accept her reality of him as the truth. Trey has a thinker's mind, and when he's dealing with an issue, he will openly discuss all things good and bad about it before making a decision and take into consideration your opinions." Bridget went on to say, "I learned that it is his way of mentally preparing himself for anything." A few minutes later, Emerson explained, "Dinah is like my wife's sister in a lot of ways. She decided that the woman who was involved with her ex-husband had to hurt just as much as she did. So, she drove over her ex-husband's legs 3 times before she stopped the car. That's why we have been so concerned, Trey," Dora said. "She was found to have a mental health issue. The stress, the anger, and the emotions coming out caused a break. It took him 3 years and 6 operations to heal, but to this day he requires the use of a cane to walk. With our family history, until Dinah gets professional help, we can't take the chance that she will be all right going through the divorce." Bridget took my hand. "There will be no driving your car for a while. I don't want to give her the chance to be near you in any way. As we ate, we discussed little things, keeping it light. Dinah approached Bridget's house carrying an envelope. As started walking up the driveway, a gentleman got out of a vehicle and stopped her. "Ms. Richard, I'm sorry to inform you that no one is allowed on the property," he said. "I'm now asking you to turn around and remove yourself." "I was just going to leave this letter at the door," Dinah replied. "I can't allow you to do that. We have strict orders," he replied. "I suggest that you either mail it or have a courier service deliver it. Can I escort you off the property?" Dinah recognized the security firm. It was one that her father had used very often when needed in the past. She had been warned by her parents that they would be doing this if they did not see that she was seeing someone professionally. Dinah started crying because she knew that her parents didn't even trust her anymore. Walking home, she decided to have a courier pick it up and deliver it to Trey's office. Tonight, she would begin to pack what she could take out of the house when she had to leave. Tomorrow, she had a real estate agent that was going to show her a few places that were up for sale that might suit her tastes. With what was going on in her life, right now she was in no party mood. On the ride into work, Bridget and I both agreed after sleeping on it that we would accept her father's and my father's in-law offer. I went into the building carrying my briefcase and brown bag containing my 3 roast beef sandwiches. The day was going fine, and in the afternoon, as I was headed to grab another coffee, the receptionist stopped me and handed me an envelope that had been couriered in. It was from Dinah. My first reaction was to throw it in the trash. Instead, I put on the corner of my desk and got on with my day. Bridget called a few minutes later, and I told her that I had received a couriered envelope from Dinah delivered to the office. She asked what it said. I replied that I have not even opened it yet and wasn't sure that I would. Bridget got me to agree to bring it home with me so we could discuss together what we should do. It was after dinner that I opened the letter. It read, "Trey, looking back after seeing Bridget and you together, I realized too late that I had pushed you out of my life long before I had my tubes tied. I lost sight while chasing the dream of what was important in my life. Even my getting my tubes tied has to be tied into my chasing my dream because I really did not consider the consequences of what I was really doing." Bridget, when I asked her if I knew her boyfriend, said I didn't. "I just now am beginning to see how true that is. In honesty, you did not leave me. I left you willingly because of what I did without discussing it with you. Mom and Dad demanded that I seek professional help. Please tell them that I have set up my first appointment. I'm still not sure if I will go, but I am considering it. I have a real estate lady looking for new digs for me and have begun packing to move. When I saw the two of you together as you walked together towards the limo, I realized that we never looked like the two of you do together. It's got me questioning our relationship and wondering if we were ever in love. I may never know the answer to that. I would like to have our divorce sealed so that everything is kept out of the New York Times and other media that I am beginning to hate. My lawyer said your lawyer had built such a detailed case that there are 6 or 7 different reasons for granting the divorce. I won't be fighting it as long as you are reasonable about it. Forever yours, Dinah." Bridget looked at me before asking, "Do you think she's being sincere or not?" "I'm not sure," I replied. "She just might be living proof that you can't fix stupid. My problem is that based on the long-term lies, how can I not believe this is just not more of her bullshit? I can see why she needs to keep it quiet. She does not want the real reason why she got her tubes tied to come out. That little piece of information we kept out of the divorce petition as a bargaining chip if things went really bad. What could she have done that's worse than what we already know?" Bridget asked. "She aborted what would have been our firstborn 8 weeks before at a hospital-owned clinic," I replied. "My lawyer and I kept that private because I did not want her parents to know. For some reason, her body would not accept any kind of birth control, and she refused to use inserts because they always caused woman problems for her." Bridget looked at me with tears in her eyes before saying, "I presume you found out when you sued for her records." "Yes, I did. I decided to leave it out because I had promised to tell Emerson everything," I said. "I just couldn't devastate my in-laws with that truth, so I informed them just what they needed to know." "Why do you feel they need protecting?" Bridget asked while wondering why I would feel needed to act this way. "Emerson and Dora are old-fashioned conservative Christians who live by their beliefs," I replied, knowing that I knew if I disclosed the whole truth, it would destroy their world and change their reality for good. I was a man who wanted children of my own who had to ask myself, would I want to know if I was them? The answer I came to was no. Bridget looked at me while taking in the seriousness of what I said and knew that I felt overwhelmed. I pulled Bridget into my arms, holding her tight. For some reason, she felt the need to whisper in my ear, "Let it go. Don't hold yourself accountable for something that was beyond your control." It surprised me to learn that she knew I did. Finally, when we parted, she said, "Did we ever know Dinah at all? What kind of woman would do that to her husband and parents?" One who has it all and is so jealous of anyone ever getting a part of what would belong to her by birthright, her father's millions, I replied. Now you know why I am so confused as to what I should do. Then agree to keep it quiet, Bridget said. We really don't want media attention with what Dinah's father and mine are attempting to do. I looked at her and smiled. That was not on my mind, but your thinking is right. I picked up my cell phone and sent her a text message that said, I will instruct my lawyer to get it sealed. Bridget, I'm going to send this to both your father and Emerson as an email in the morning from work. I feel they have a right to know, I said. Then I will do the same to my lawyer to have it sealed. And I did. The rest of the week went by very quietly. Reports in the New York Times showed all concerned that nothing had changed as per Dinah's conduct. She was still being reported on as being the social butterfly, but was more subdued. The gossip reporters suggested that she was behaving herself because of the ongoing divorce, which was now sealed. The New York Times gossip lady was questioning quite publicly why I had requested that since I had been the one dumped so publicly. I had sent Clarence and Emerson a list of 10 names who were definitely interested in being interviewed along with what I knew about them. Emerson called me late Friday afternoon to confirm that Dinah was indeed seeing a professional. A private investigator had been following her since he received a copy of her letter to me and confirmed that she had gone for her first appointment. Saturday afternoon, a for sale sign was placed on both Bridget's and my former residence. Dinah's lawyer had provided us with written approval to sell the house. Both Bridget and I were surprised that we saw no sign of Dinah at all. Saturday night, we were awoken from the sound of a loud explosion. Both Bridget and I threw some clothes on and ran outside to discover my old home was totally in flames. We could smell natural gas in the air. One of the security guards was holding a young man in cuffs. Fire department and police are on their way, the security guard said. It looks like he hit the wrong house. Maybe, but I wouldn't be so sure, I said. Wasn't there a clinic burned down a couple of days ago? Yes, there was, the security guard said. It has been ruled as a case of arson. The only area totally destroyed was the record room and their computer system. It was run in a partnership with the hospital. Bridget looked at me in shock as I said, please make sure that a police officer talks to me as soon as possible, because if I am right, there may be another fire in the next few days. Bridget looked at me with a questioned look, so I added, my lawyer's office. As we walked back into Bridget's home, she held my hand. Once inside, she said, you don't think Dinah is behind this, do you? For me, the question is that I can't say she's not, I said. So, I feel obligated to inform the police so that they can decide for themselves if they feel they need to check it out. With her big signing bonus, she could afford it. It took about an hour for the detective to knock on our door. I answered it and invited him in. He took notes as I explained why I was concerned that my ex-wife Dinah Richards was behind it. I recognized the name, but I can't picture the face, he said. Do you have a photo? Bridget asked for his cell phone number and texted him one of the images she still had of Dinah on her phone. While she was doing that, I opened up my briefcase and pulled out the record of the abortion and handed it to him. He could clearly see that the form she signed was from the clinic that had been torched was for an abortion. I told him that if my thinking was right, that my lawyer's office would be the next target hit. She wanted to hide the record of the abortion. For what reason? He asked with extreme interest, as he took an image of the record with his cell phone. Dinah Richards, my soon-to-be ex-wife, is Emerson Stevens' only child, I explained. If he found out what she had done because of his religious beliefs, she would lose all rights to an inheritance. Emerson is a man who believes that life begins at conception and would write his daughter out of his life. The detective got a very serious look on his face as he allowed everything to sink in. I'm grateful for the information. You're right, Dinah Richards has definitely become a person of interest. It gives me a great starting point when I begin interrogating the man we are now holding. I thank you for waiting up for me. Now I have to go wake up the detective that's investigating the clinic fire to see what he has found out so that we can compare our notes. We would never have been able to link the two together without the information you have provided. I escorted the detective to the door, and after we shook hands, I locked up behind him. It was already 5 Sunday morning. Bridget and I crawled back into bed to wide awake to sleep, so we cuddled each other as we talked it all out. We would learn later that I was partly right and partly wrong. We must have dozed off because we were both awakened by the sounds coming from our cell phones. I answered mine and Bridget answered her. I said, put your speaker on, dear, and we will talk to both sides of the family at once. Everyone was in a panic. It had been on the morning news. Clarence, Gracie, Dora, and Emerson wanted to first make sure that we were all right and then wanted to find out what we knew. I told them that the security team M had hired had caught the guy, but they felt that he had hit the wrong house. Other than that, we were flying blind. Dinah moved out on Thursday. She bought a 4,000 square foot furnished apartment near the downtown and got a short closure, Em said. Her movers packed her up what she wanted and moved it. They were done early Friday afternoon. Bridget and Trey, pack your clothing, you're moving in with us, Grace said. This getting scary. At least here we can close the gates and secure the property. Do you want Clarence and me to come and help you? No, Mom, Bridget responded. Trey and I can handle it. We will just bring what we need to get through a couple of weeks if that's okay with you. We had put this house up for sale yesterday anyway. Between the two of we filled my full-size sedan up, using both the trunk and the back seat. I had to laugh because I was feeling like a vagabond. Before we left, I called the detective to let him know what I learned and suggested that the security guards had been right in their thinking that the arsonist had gotten the wrong house. I gave him Clarence's and Grace's address and informed him we were moving there for our own self-protection until the house sold. Bridget and I had discussed what our sleeping arrangement would be for the next few weeks on the way back to her parents'. It was her feeling that they would give us separate bedrooms. We were pleased to learn that we were wrong. They already had accepted the fact that we were a couple. When looking back at the time later, it would be with happy memories, because we both received a refresher course on how to make a marriage work. The little things we learned from observing Bridget's parents' interactions we brought into our relationship made ours stronger each and every day. One of the first things we worked on together was making sure that we did not assume to know the other's thinking on anything that might become important. Bridget's parents had to laugh because we were already starting to finish each other's sentences. A few minutes later, as I was still chatting with Bridget's parents, Bridget came into her father's den all excited and said, "You two better come into the family room to see for yourself what just came over the news." We followed her. She used the remote to rewind the program to start what she wanted to see. I was shocked to see it was Dinah's boy toy that she went to Paris with being placed under the arrest. He was being charged with 2 counts of arson. He apparently had hired a man to torch the clinic and Bridget's residence. The man who was also been charged had admitted he had gotten the wrong house. Why would he want to burn down Bridget's house if it wasn't to kill the two of you? Gracie asked. And who is he? There is something you need to see, I said. I'll be right back. As I left the room, I heard Bridget said, "Mom, Dad, what Trey is about to show you and explain can never go outside of this room because of the emotional pain it will cause for 2 of our friends. The man who got arrested today was the one that went to Paris with Dinah." I came back and handed it first to Clarence, who after looking at it passed it over to his wife. My divorce lawyer discovered it when we got the medical records. We served the clinic with a court order for their records concerning my ex-wife. She had the abortion 8 weeks before she had her tubes tied. "I'm going to go put this into the safe," Clarence said. "I'm afraid if they can link the arsons to Dinah, it is going to come out anyway. It's sad that Dora and Em may never know how much you're protecting them." With that said, he went back into his den. Grace said, "So that's why the divorce is sealed. Dinah wanted to make sure that her parents would never know what she had done. Does she know you have this?" "Don't know, but she must be really concerned about the possibility, otherwise none of this would be happening," I said. "Mom, the only question is, does the tomboy realize how much he has been manipulated? Considering who he is, his monthly allowance would easily have covered the cost of this," Bridget said. "Dinah may be sitting pretty in the knowledge that she can't be connected to this. That woman will no longer be a problem for you two, I promise," Grace said. "No one puts my family in danger. By the time I am done with her, your divorced Trey will be a walk in the park." I looked over at Bridget. Her face showed some serious concern. I went to speak, but she shook her head, warning me off. Later, as Bridget and I laid on the bed cuddling, she explained, "There have been a very few times I have seen my mother with that look. Each time it happened, there was a threat to her sense of peace and security. She is going to do something to resolve the issue permanently. Dinah won't be touched, but she will not be an ongoing problem. My mother used to be a character actress on the stage. I believe she is going to use those skills she developed back then to send a message to Dinah that she will never forget. Hopefully it will force Dinah to speed things up," I said. "I'm ready for all of it to be put behind us." I was up early, so I was downstairs making a pot of coffee before getting ready for the day when a strange woman came into the kitchen. I looked at her and said, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" The lady laughed and said, "I was hoping to be out before anyone got up. So, promise me you will forget you ever saw me looking like this. It's taken me 3 hours to do the makeover and get dressed. Not a word will be mentioned about this, I promise, Grace." "Bridget explained to me that you used to be in the theater back in the day," I said. "Thanks for getting my adrenaline going this morning. I won't even ask what you're up to. When I deliver the type of message like I am going to today, I make sure before I leave, they know what they see in front of them is an illusion. I will even change the sound of my voice 2 or 3 times to reinforce the seriousness of what I'm saying. That way they will be forced to take very seriously what I have to say to them. Grace said, once I put the fear of God into them, I have never had a problem. In my whole married life, it's not failed me once. Well, I will never forget that you could be standing in the same room with me without me knowing, I said. It's a good thing I don't have a devious mind. I was in a rush for my daughter to get married because I wanted grandbabies to hold, Grace said. Now I can honestly say I'm glad she didn't. You two met when you both were not really looking and fell in love for the right reasons. That is a blessing that Clarence and I shared when we started out. You two remind both of us as us when we were younger. In a couple of weeks, we will be flying back to attend a friend's anniversary, I explained. At that time, Bridget will be meeting my parents. I've told them the whole story, so they are aware of everything. Keep it quiet for now because Bridget has not learned that part. With that, Grace went out the door. I took 2 coffees up to the bedroom so we could start getting ready for the day. It was around 11 in the morning, Dinah, having just gotten up in her new condo when there was a knock at the door. It was an insurance representative here to inspect and photo the place because of the value she paid for the place. Dinah let her in, and the lady began taking photos of the place while she made her first coffee. Finally, the lady spoke again, but with a different voice. Mrs. Richards, who is soon to be divorced, I am not an insurance representative, I am an agent who has been given a policy that has been taken out on you, she said. You have stepped on and used one too many people to get you to the point where you are, the lady said. I have not been hired to kill, although I wish I had. The person or persons who have hired me want to make it clear, the lady said again using a different voice, that they have had enough of your bullshit. They have decided that you have to change your ways. With that said, the lady took out a vial out of her purse, opened it, and poured the contents over the wooden dining table. It started eating it. Dinah stood there in shock. Remember, the next time you see me, I will not look or sound like this, the lady said. You saw the damage I was able to do your expensive table. Just remember this day because the next time I will be throwing on your face. With that said, the lady picked up the items she came in with and exited the place. By the time I got back that night, Grace had returned and looked her normal self. Bridget and I spent Saturday and Sunday house hunting. On Monday, Bridget called me around 4 o'clock and said, we're going out for dinner with Emerson and Dora. They said they need to talk to us both. I don't know what it's about, but I think something has happened. We arrived and were led to our private table by the hostess. Em and Dora were waiting for us. After greeting each other and ordering our drinks, Dinah has flown to California to look for a second residence, he said. She is feeling the heat and wants to get out of the city. We feel something has happened that has changed her views of always being a New York girl. Maybe it's the fact that her current boy toy is looking at doing some time has forced her to want to put as much distance as possible, I said. I really have no clue as to what she's up to. She's become quiet and distant, as if something has shaken her reality to the bone, Dora said. When I asked her about it, all she would say was I did it to myself. We went over to talk to her on the weekend and to see her new place, Emerson said. It's a beautiful condo, but she is going to have to replace an expensive dining room set. It appears some kind of acid has destroyed the table. I asked her about it, and she refused to explain. I just thought Grace had delivered her message in such a way it had registered better than I imagined. Dinah was making changes in her life for her own protection. Tuesday afternoon, after the stock market closed, my divorce lawyer called. Dinah's lawyer had sent us a revised settlement offer. Both my lawyer and I were surprised by what I was being offered. Dinah was even willing to pay my lawyer's fees. As a result, I would come out of it better than I had thought. I told her to accept it before she changed her mind. You understand, if the judge approves it, you will get your annulment will be done in less than 2 months, she said. Do you think it was her boy toy getting arrested that forced her to make you such a good settlement offer? To be honest, I was told that someone sent her a message in a personal way, I said, after he had been arrested. Perhaps it was from someone from his side of the family. I learned last night she is in California looking for a new residence because she wants to spend more time there. As I looked over at Bridget sitting beside me reading a book on the plane headed to St. Louis that Thursday morning, I thought how blessed I was for what Dinah's behavior had brought me. Both Bridget and I had left our former employers. For the next 2 weeks, we would be vacationing in my old stomping grounds. By the time we got back, the divorce will have been completed. Our home would have been repainted and ready for us to move in. Bridget's parents had surprised us with it 2 days after I gave her the ring she was now wearing on her left hand. It was on 2.5 acres of land less than 2 miles from their house. I told Grace the reason she wanted in the neighborhood because she wanted to babysit the grandkids. She had replied, "You got that right, so when are you going to start working on them?" As we descended down into the St. Louis airport, I said, "We got about a 45-minute wait before we have to catch our connector flight to the Cape." From there, it will be about a 45-minute drive for us to get to Marble Hill where we will be staying. I'm looking forward to seeing where you grew up, she said, and to seeing some of my dad's side of the family while I am here. Do you have anything planned for us today after we get there? You find out as soon as we get off at Cape, I said with a chuckle. We got off the plane in Cape and walked across the pavement to the small terminal. I could see my parents waiting for us. As soon as we came through the sliding doors, Bridget caught on. I was a younger version of my dad. They walked towards us and he said in his deep voice, "This beautiful lady must be the Bridget you told us all about." I introduced Bridget to Beth and Ben Richards, my parents. Dad said, "You go pick up the luggage, I'll go get the truck." When we got to the farm, Dad and I brought the luggage in while Mom gave Bridget a quick tour of the house. Bridget fell in love with the kitchen that had an old wood stove in it. "Do you still use it?" Bridget asked. "Every winter," Mom said. "Twice a week I bake the bread and buns for the week using that stove. Cuts down the electrical and heats the house. The rest of the time I use it when doing roasts or other large cuts of meat." My mom was thrilled that Bridget loved to cook and got in and helped her when she started making lunch. The four of us, after eating, took Bridget on her first horse ride on a trail I had often rode on a kid. We cut it short, not wanting to tire her out. After we had removed the saddles, we showed her how to brush down the horses. It was fun seeing her excitement in doing what we considered normal things. Bridget had a lot of questions which we all answered. Dad, as we were walking behind the ladies, said, "Looks like this time you got it right." It was after dinner that Bridget and I had to explain how we had met. My parents had lots of questions, and we explained it as well as we could. I think their full approval came when they heard about the abortion. "A woman who can abort their unborn for any reason," my mom said, "has shown that she could justify killing their own spouse. That's the problem in society today. There is no respect for life in any way." Bridget and I, in the privacy of our bedroom, discussed what our mother had said. We both came to the conclusion that my mother had been right. We both agreed that we would no longer discuss Dinah to anybody because the part was behind us forever. It's been 6 months since my annulment was granted. Bridget and I had a small ceremony. My parents flew out to witness the ceremony. Like my dad told everybody he had to see it to believe it. My mother-in-law is in her glory as Bridget has started to show. So now she's running around town finding the pieces to set up the best 2 nurseries in town. One for our place, the second for hers. To be ready for when Bridget returns to work. The New York Times in all its glory has reported in its latest gossip column that Bridget is carrying 2. It must be true because we all know the New York Times, the most liberal paper in the country, does not lie. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.